young man's boots crunch against loose gravel as faint torchlight flickers against the walls. A low, oppressive hum resonates through the air, a vast cavern illuminated by an eerie, unnatural light. The walls ripple as he passes through, alive, slick, with a sheen of condensation. Twisted pillars of stone and bone stretch upward, framing a space filled with unearthly treasures and petrified figures frozen in agony. A sideways glance, a deep breath, almost gasping. Stone figures locked in their final moments, a hand raised in futile defense, a scream forever silenced. The air grows colder as the realization settles in. These were not carved by mortal hands. The adventurer's hand trembles as they grip the hilt of their weapon. Glancing upward, their eyes lock on a shadowy shape hovering at the edge of the light. Slowly, it moves closer. And then, he sees it. The beholder. A floating orb of flesh, its single, unblinking eye dominating its grotesque form. 10 stalks writhe above its head, each crowned with an eye that faints with a differing color in the fluorescent light, illuminated slightly by his torch and the eyes themselves. Its central eye turns to the terrified man, and in that moment he is frozen, not by its power, but by its presence. His every instinct screaming to flee, but his legs rooted to the ground. The gaze locks him in place, and then a cold darkness. Drist de Urden, Year of the Prince, 1357 DR, from Starless Night. The beholder's alien nature frightens children and adults alike, and stories of its incredible power and ferocity abound. Scribes have spent many centuries attempting to investigate the mysteries of these fearsome creatures. Despite the terror they inspire in humans and humanoids, beholders do possess a degree of civilization, however foreign or alien it may appear. They build cities and create art. Some of them even wrestle with the questions of existence. Today, we glance our focus into discovering the various creation stories of the beholders, the powers that each of their eyes entail, and the beholder kin that make up these infamous aberrations. Most beholder breeds attribute their creation to a goddess they call the Great Mother. Most legends refer to the Great Mother spawning a single beholder named Kazamnal. True to beholder form, the physical characteristics of this spawn usually match the characteristics of the beholder telling the story. Kazamnal gave birth to the mortal ancestors of the beholder race and instructed them to gather together all knowledge so that the mortal creatures would be like their grandmother, the Great Mother, who knows all. Unfortunately, some of the children of the Great Mother, known spitefully as the traitors, gave birth to offspring that didn't resemble the Great Mother. The appearance of these aberrations heralded a genocidal war waged by the so-called true beholders. This war continues even to this day. Scribes of the beholder god Xemnid, the only mortal offspring of Kazamnal to become a god, tell a different story. As they see it, clues and hints pieced together over hundreds of years clearly reveal that the Great Mother is so vast and complex that she changes appearance from one moment to the next. These texts also suggest that, unlike other beholders, the Great Mother lays eggs. For some unknown reason, each batch of eggs that she lays hatches a different breed of beholder. In addition, Xemnid's scribes believe that the Great Mother contains so much knowledge that she cannot or will not communicate with lesser beings. Rather, she does nothing but cruise endlessly among the darker planes, companioned only by her alien wisdom and incomprehensible visions. Legendary stories tell of beholders that have witnessed the Great Mother laying eggs and gibbering to herself as she traversed the planes. Beholders are found throughout the planes of existence. Long ago, a true breed beholder named Vekrispa lost its sight in battle and eventually became the first beholder mage. This mage soon developed spells that would allow it to move from plane to plane on its quest for knowledge. Vicrispa often took true breed beholders with it on its travels through the planes. Eventually, a force of false breed beholders, having been badly battered in warfare against the true breeds, captured the first mage and stole its knowledge of planar travel. Most false breed beholders fled to other planes so that they might grow numerous and return to destroy the true breeds. Interestingly, almost all beholder breeds lay claim to the ancestral figure Vicrispa and blame all other breeds for killing it. A mistake common to adventurers, one which kills many of them, is the idea that a beholder's eye powers are merely its arsenal of weapons. This is like saying that a human's hands are nothing but an arsenal of weapons. The beholder's powers are its hands, its tools, its books, its paintings, its very survival. Each of the beholder's eyes is a sensory organ that allows it to see its environment. In addition, each eye acts as a tiny generator of magical energy. Mechanically, they function much like human eyes. Dilation of the pupil controls the amount of light entering the eye. The cornea and lens focus the light upon the retina further back, and the retina transmits the image through the optic nerve to the brain where it is interpreted. The central eye is so large that it can perceive incredible levels of detail. This is one trait that allows them to spot the tiny differences between beholder breeds. The lens of the central eye, however, is not much deeper than the lens of a human eye. Because of this, they do not possess telescopic sight. In fact, the creature can only see about as far as a human being. Unlike the human eye, their eyes send and receive various forms of energy. In this case, the energy is magical in nature. The beholder's vitreous humor, which is the fluid making up the bulk of the eye's contents, contains a high magical charge. When it wishes to make an attack with its eye, the brain sends an impulse back along the optic nerve. This impulse tells the eye to release a portion of its magical energy out through the pupil. In many cases, the pupil contracts to define the shape of the beam emission, while the lens alters shape to focus the emission. The magical nature of a beholder's eye attack makes it difficult to reflect. Only a specially enchanted glass called a sphere mirror can successfully reflect this attack. The beholder's eye powers are not wholly dependent on vision. In other words, if they are temporarily blinded in one eye, they still have access to that eye power. Partially blinded beholders may use an undamaged eye stalk to target an opponent located within the vector of a blinded eye. Scribes have found research notebooks of Renasic of Sigil that form a detailed discussion on the eye powers, including each of the eyes and its specific powers. The central eye is a formidable combat weapon. The beholder's anti-magic ray is an enormous convenience to the creature in its home. These aberrations are able to close their eyes and even contract the skin around their central eyes, the way humans do. This allows them to narrow its anti-magic ray down to a fraction of its maximum combat size. A solitary beholder will often seek out magical traps and devices that cease to function within the area of its anti-magic ray. This allows the creature complete freedom in a lair full of deadly traps. Over a span of years, a solitary beholder can accumulate a variety of magical traps and devices. These include portcullises that drop when their magic is turned off, boxes that release deadly gas when their magic ceases to function, and magically locked doors that spring open to release captured monsters. Hive, city, and exile beholders often have access to magical craftsmen who know the Wall of Stone spell. Such craftsmen are usually beholder mages, though an exiled beholder might employ a human or humanoid wizard, familiar with various spells for defense. The beholder's first and second smaller eyes are often focused around charm. This power allows them to engage in a few minutes of easy interrogation. Usually, they will learn many useful facts and secrets through the application of this power. In addition to this use, the charm can convince the humanoid or monster to put aside their weapons for a nice chat. Once the hapless victim lays down his arms, they become easy prey for the beholder. Exiled beholders, those who no longer live with members of their own breed, often use this power to acquire their first few human minions. They will often travel in areas where the native populations fear and loathe them. In these cases, it is easier on the beholders if their passage goes unmarked. Often, they will use their third eye, focusing on sleep, to neutralize potential witnesses without harming them. These creatures are immune to sleep spells from the weave, although they are not from their own kin. This suggests that ancient beholders originally used this power as a means of controlling their fractious offspring. The fourth eye is probably the most crucial of all their eyes, as it acts in a way as the beholder's hands through telekinesis. The use of this power is to manipulate objects, build, fight, compete, and generally interact with the world around them. Some beholders are capable of delicacy and intricacy on par with the hands of master craftsmen. In dangerous situations, they are able to wrest important magical objects, such as weapons, wands, and scrolls from opponents. In addition to its rather obvious combat applications, the fifth ray and its petrification possesses a number of other uses. Perhaps the most important of these uses is artistic in nature. In fact, sculpture is the #1 art form in beholder society. These creatures will often charm victims and persuade them to stand in artful poses until they are eventually petrified in the ideal position that is acceptable to them. This power luckily is reversible, and many use it to build up a larder. The sixth eye is both a force of terror and is used for an important non-combative function. First, it allows creation of new tunnels in subterranean homes. Second, it is useful in their sculpting. Their control over this power is impressive, known as the disintegrate eye. They will use this to quickly eradicate humanoids or monsters attacking themselves if they cannot find a reason to keep the being alive. The seventh and eighth eyes are for fear and slowing sown targets. Putting their targets in an almost frozen state and creating psychological fear is useful when the beholder needs a potential advantage on an aggressive combatant. The ninth and 10th rays are built solely for offense. One inflicting unimaginable torture and serious wounds on the target, with the 10th eye destroying the creature with a single gaze, obliterating it from existence. Numerous scholars and sages who specialize in lore have catalogued numerous aspects of these creatures' belief systems. Known as the 3 facets of beholder psychology, these tenets should be examined before any conversation with these aberrations. The 3 facts include: I represent the ideal. Nothing that is not ideal has a right to exist. It exists only for my purposes. And knowledge is power. The first is that every particular beholder breed believes that it is the paragon of beholder kin. All other breeds, even those demonstrating only slight differentiation from the ideal behavior, are flawed. The second focuses on a belief that they make no distinction between flawed sentient and flawed non-sentient creatures. Neither kind of creature has any worth at all when compared to the ideal beholder. This quagmire of logic represents the only way they can rationalize the continued existence and power of obviously inferior creatures. They additionally use this type of faulty thinking to justify their innate paranoia. Knowledge is power is the most well-known phrase. This phrase echoes a long-held belief of most sentient races. But with a beholder, they recognize that the acquisition of knowledge means greater influence, skill, and destructive ability. Therefore, these creatures seek to gain knowledge wherever possible. Once they decide that a particular being possesses knowledge that they require, the beholder will stop at nothing to acquire the information. Many would-be adventurers have bragged about the fact they defeated a beholder without lifting a single weapon. These worthies claim to have outwitted the alien creature. The phrase from each story appears here primarily to save adventurers from an untimely fate. Adventurers should only employ these attempts at trickery as a last resort. When confronted by a beholder, the stalwart adventurer should say one of the following statements. "Fool, do you think I would come here to confront you if I did not possess enough power to protect myself? I am here to find out if you wish to trade treasure in exchange for knowledge." Amazing! I just ran into a beholder that looked almost exactly like you, except for the stripes on its flanks. Master, I live only to serve you. These statements best target the 7 components that make up the 2 minds of the beholder. The 7 components, plans, memory of failing, permitted memories, rationalizations, missing memories, emotional states, and paranoia, all make up the 2 minds that an adventurer should be aware of. Although very similar to other beholders in many ways, abominations possess their own special abilities and biology. A death kiss is a lesser beholder that might come into being when they have a vivid nightmare about losing blood. Instead of magical eye rays, it has 10 long tentacles, each ending in a mouth full of teeth. In coloration and shape, it is similar to the beholder that dreamed it into existence. A death kiss survives solely on ingested blood, which it uses to generate electrical energy inside its body. Paranoid about dying from starvation, it obsessively drains even little creatures such as rats, in an effort to stave off this fate for as long as possible. A death kiss lacks the combat finesse and intelligence of a beholder. It might attempt an unusual maneuver to control its prey, but in most cases, it attaches one or more of its tentacles to a creature and drains blood until its prey collapses. A Gorth is a hungry, tyrannical, beholder-like creature that eats magic and tries to exact tribute from anything weaker than itself. Its body is about 4 feet in diameter, with 6 eye stalks, a central eye, and 4 small grasping tentacles near its mouth. A Gorth can survive on meat, but prefers to sustain itself with power drained from magic objects. If starved of magic for several weeks, it is forced back to its home plane, so it constantly seeks new items to drain. When a ritual to summon a spectator goes wrong, a Gorth might push itself through the flawed connection, arriving immediately or several minutes later. It might present itself as a beholder to ignorant creatures in an attempt to intimidate them. A spectator is a lesser beholder that is summoned from another plane of existence by a magical ritual, the components of which include 4 beholder eye stalks that are consumed by the ritual's magic. Like any beholder, a spectator views itself as the epitome of its kind and has an intense hatred of other spectators. When a spectator has fulfilled its service, it is free to do as it pleases. With the spectator's loss of purpose, the flickers of madness it displayed during its servitude flourish. When moving through a beholder hive, many beholders employ watchers. These watchers are the reconnaissance experts of the hive. They are large spheres with 3 central eyes arranged equally. These 3 eyes have several uses. The eye on top, referred to as the compound eye, can send telepathic messages, speak in any language, and force creatures to obey the commands it sets out. They also have the abilities of illusion magic and seeing into other planes to defend from extraplanar threats, or adventurers with unique abilities to traverse the planes. Most adventurers encounter solitary beholders. These heroes are often impressed with the artistic ability of these creatures, but few realize that beholders in larger communities engage in magical research much as humanoids do. Beholder mages and examiners work together to design and fabricate magical items that have a practical use in beholder communities. In many cases, these researchers work from notes and experiments taken from human or humanoid wizards. Beholder mages craft armor usually from an enchanted set of plate mail. A beholder will strap itself to the armor with the belts and act as the armor's head. This gives the beholder further utility and defense, as well as utilizing appendages it wouldn't otherwise have. Mouthpicks are tools and weapons that allow beholders to manipulate objects when it is inconvenient or impossible to use their telekinetic power. The typical mouthpick is a mechanical device with manipulative objects or weapons on one end and an attachment on the other. A beholder simply clasps the attachment end of the item and manipulates the pick with its lips and tongue. Throughout their lairs, their understanding of gravity is often unmatched. They have labelled some magic as the sticky ceiling, which is a type of levitation magic. This enchantment magic causes gravity to reverse in the designated area. All creatures and objects within the magical effect fall up towards the ceiling. This makes traversing a lair difficult for adventurers, giving the beholder's propensity for putting traps on the ceilings of these ceilings. Despite their reluctance to bond socially, beholders often gather together under the banner of a hive mother or overseer. These communities often possess a high degree of cultural and social development. A beholder hive is significantly less common than the appearance of a solitary beholder. A hive usually consists of a hive mother and anywhere between 5 to 10 beholders. Unlike solitary beholders, that may not possess a specific reason for establishing a lair in a certain area, hive mothers always build a hive for a specific purpose. This could include a foundation of a beholder city, the destruction of a humanoid community, or the acquisition of a powerful artifact. When a city is built, only one hive mother may rule. When there is a conflict on who should rule, the rival hive mothers engage in a contest known as the dropping. Once every 2 years, all competing hive mothers bring their most favoured offspring to a grand assembly. These offspring will act as the hive mother's champions in the contest. Each of these champions climbs to an altitude of 1,000 feet. At a prearranged signal, all the champions dive toward the ground. The beholder that comes closest to the ground without hitting it reigns victorious, and its hive mother assumes the rulership of the city. Naturally, this is a very dangerous event, and some beholders end up seriously injured or dead. The newly inducted hive mother's first action once in power is to create a council of hive mothers. Usually it chooses council members from those hive mothers whose plans closely match its own. However, some ruling hive mothers honour the memory of those beholders killed or injured in the dropping by elevating their hive mothers onto the council. The council is actually the most civil of all beholder organisations, as its members use logic rather than emotion. In their eternal paranoia, beholders relentlessly seek knowledge, not out of curiosity, but as a weapon. Their insatiable hunger for information about magic, planar secrets, and their enemies is both their strength and their curse. They hoard truths, warp them, and twist them to fit their vision of dominance. To a beholder, ignorance is a vulnerability, and knowing is power in absolute form. Each stalked eye of a beholder is an extension of its warped mind. 10 rays of raw magic, each capable of unraveling a foe in its own unique way. These are not tools of convenience, but manifestations of a paranoia that demands control. Disintegration, petrification, and sleep, all dictated by the beholder's fear of anything that dares challenge its supremacy. And then there are the hive cities, great bastions where beholders reign over their kin and enslaved minions. These alien metropolises are the antithesis of order as mortals understand it. Shaped by the dreams and nightmares of the beholder at the helm, these cities are alive, pulsating with warped geometry and layers of menace. Beholders teach us that in their quest to control, they create worlds of unimaginable complexity, yet remain prisoners of their own fears. From them, we learn that knowledge without wisdom can be a cage, and that a mind closed to others becomes its own greatest enemy. Their monstrous brilliance is a cautionary tale, reminding us that the true enemy often lurks within. Thank you for watching the video. We have more videos planned, so like and subscribe to make sure you watch those when they release. Thanks to our members, DJ, Alberto, and Zeno, who have signed up to our memberships. If you would like to support the channel further, take a look at the links for Patreon and our membership on YouTube. See you all on the next video.